Hello and welcome to the Armadillo Christmas Bazaar. My name is Nakia and I am with Sun Radio. This morning we are doing another one of our Sun Radio sessions where we are talking to the musicians who are playing here at the bazaar, as well as some of the artisans who are creating and offering up all of this incredible art here at the Armadillo Christmas Bazaar. This morning, I am joined by Austin's own beloved, one of our favorite parts of the sound of our town, Warren Hood.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. We are recording these, and they will eventually live on the Armadillo website, as well as the Sun Radio website and social media. So we appreciate anybody that wants to come over and hang out with us here in the audience, but hopefully you can hear us loud and clear out there. I've got a lot of questions for you, Warren, but I want to start with what I feel like is the most obvious question that you get a lot, which is obviously you grew up surrounded by an incredible, almost embarrassment of riches of great musicians. At what point were you initially inspired to be like, oh, I want to do this too? And then you were like, oh, no, absolutely, I have to do this.
Well, from birth, I was going around with my dad, Champ Hood, to all of his gigs.
Right.
Like literally in the carrier. And, running around when I'm 5 years old in bars. And I was at the Continental Club when I was 7.
Wow.
Playing pool in the back. So it's hard to pinpoint a moment because I just kind of was always in it. And I remember not that long ago going through, I still have like boxes of like school papers from grade school.
Sure.
And I went through one that I got in like kindergarten, and it said like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote down musician, but I didn't play anything yet. And I didn't know anything about music. I just kind of like knew it's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then that took a back seat to basketball, and I was going to be in the NBA. It was going to happen for me. I had the skills.
Wow.
I was on my way, and then everybody grew, and I didn't. So I fell back on music. And but it's true that, just seeing all the artists from then, Tony Price, who we just lost recently.
Yeah.
And people like Alejandro Escovedo and the Flatlanders, and I can just go on and on of all the music I was exposed to. And I was in my 20s before I realized that the whole world didn't know about all these people. Yeah. And I first discovered like Bob Dylan and the Stones and the Beatles and everything else. And but I just kind of thought that was what the world knew was Austin music.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate to have grown up here in the thick of it and seen it all firsthand, but also wonder what it might have been like to not have known about any of that and come here when I was 20-something and discover it for the first time.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea because so many people do obviously come here and discover the Austin music scene, and I've known people who weren't musicians until they got here. Mm-hmm. But there's always that kind of like Back to the Future thing, like, well, what if instead of this is what happened? I can't really imagine being a child hanging out at the Continental Club. To me, the way you just described that sounded like it should be in some kind of HBO television show.
Well, and back then I wasn't the only one, too.
I'm
There
sure.
were some other kids,
Yeah.
and it wasn't out of the ordinary. I was shooting pool with grown-ups, and they were like, seemed to be having fun, too. And it just wasn't that out of the ordinary. If you can imagine, bars were a little more family-friendly, you might say.
Yeah, yeah.
In the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. And it's and you don't smoke, do you?
I don't, and that might be because back then they were smoking bars, and I was repulsed by it, and it was very strong.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Your clothes would smell like it, and I couldn't believe the first time that I went into like the Continental at post-smoking, what a difference it was. And then the first time, like a year later, I went to a different town where they hadn't done that yet, and walked into a smoky bar, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we did for all those years.
Yeah, it is. That's the way I feel when I go to Vegas.
Yeah.
And people are smoking on the floor and stuff. I'm like, whoa, I forgot all about this.
Right, you just get used to it.
Yeah. For years, we had a residency at Ego's,
That's
and
the smokiest bar in the
the
world.
smokiest bar in the
whole
world.
world.
And it was so tiny, and you were just stuck
Just
in
low
there.
ceilings and
Yeah, yeah.
nowhere.
Okay, so obviously Austin is known for its music scene, but somehow or another, despite so many other people, starting a band and doing this and kind of going this route, you've managed to carve out a real distinctive path for yourself, both as a player, but also as a band leader. And you've managed to do it in a way that I feel like, for instance, preparing for this interview, I went online last night and there's only one Warren Hood album,
And you can't even find it.
and it's uh,
It's not even available.
yeah, you can click on your name by yourself, and it shows songs that you played with other people, but the only other thing that's available is the one Warren Hood band album that Charlie Sexton produced.
Yeah. Can you still get that one?
You can still stream that on Apple Music.
Oh, okay.
And it's an incredible album. I forgot how
Thank
good
you.
it was.
Thank you.
I remember when it came out. I remember being very envious that Charlie produced the record, because I think at the time, had been producing a few records at that point right then.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, man, I'd love for Charlie Sexton to produce a record for me. And I thought, how did that happen? But then that's before I really knew your whole story. And you probably were playing pool with Charlie Sexton.
And I've recorded on sessions with him too, just playing fiddle on something
Yeah.
else he was producing.
Yeah.
And just kind of like, both born and raised in Austin, and we just know so many people in common, and I've just always been a huge fan of his. He's, one of the greats this town's ever produced. And
100%. Yeah.
and he was at the top of my list, and I didn't think he would do it, and he did it. And
Wow.
He's got a lot of bigger fish to fry, and,
He sure
and I'm
does.
honored he took time for me.
Now, where did you cut that one?
We did that at a few places. One was at, I think it's called Yellow Dog at the time, with David Percival.
Yeah.
And then we did, we did some at Cedar Creek. We were kind of like all over the place. It took us a year and a half to finish that, because
Wow.
Charlie was busy and I was busy.
Sure.
And I kept wanting to add stuff and
Right.
have guests come in and do a thing and,
Right.
and whatnot.
I find that most of my albums seem like they take a long time. It always blows my mind when people say, "Oh, we just went in the studio
Like
in
2 weeks.
Yeah, and they were done. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you brought up some people that were on the album, people that you brought in to collaborate. Obviously, you have the Warren Hood Band, but you were also a part of the South Austin Jug Band for
Right.
many years. And we both kind of came up residency-wise. Our first real residencies were at Momo's.
Right.
And I can remember seeing you guys there. What year did you join South Austin Jug Band?
The Jug Band kind of first formed with James Hyland, was kind of doing a solo project, and he had a friend named Justin Corsby, who I'm still friends with, who kind of helped assemble a band around him. And Justin knew Willie Pipkin,
Sure.
and he knew me,
Yeah.
and so he put us all in a room together, and we became James Hyland and the Half-Ass Band. And it was me and Willie Pipkin, James Hyland, and Matt Purrier, who's still friends and
Yeah.
played drums, and Nick Moulas on bass. And over time, that we met Will Dupuy and Matt Slusher and had some fun jam sessions. And over time, it just kind of, we started booking that, getting into bluegrass, and it kind of morphed into the Jug Band. But that was all, 1997,
Wow.
98.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like 14 when I started playing with
With the
James
Jug
and
Band,
Willie.
Yeah.
And Jug Band, I left to go to school in like 2002 or something. So from like 2000 to 2002 was kind of when my stint in the Jug Band was.
Yeah. When you left to go to school, was it a complete culture shock for you?
Yes. Yes. I went to, you went there too, right?
No, I did not.
Oh, I don't
no,
know why I thought that.
No, I flunked out of college. So.
Well, we're talking about Boston.
Yes.
And
Warren went to Berkeley.
I did. I don't admit it to everybody, but
Well, I mean, you won
I
one
did
of the
2
most
years.
prestigious awards that they offer from there.
It's interesting. If you say you went to Berkeley in Boston, it's hard to get a gig.
Really?
Yeah, but if you say it anywhere else,
Yeah.
it's very prestigious. and
Wow.
I consider it prestigious as well.
You should.
Uh, um, but there was no Mexican food. There was no 24-hour diners that I could walk to,
Right.
and it was really cold.
And how old
And
were
people
you?
didn't know about country music, and I was 18, maybe 19. And yeah, and it was interesting to go from being pretty busy, because when I was in high school, I was playing with Charlie Robinson and the Jug Band.
Right.
Every weekend, I was somewhere else, and usually around Texas, playing a show and coming home just in time for school. And it was weird to just kind of stop and not play any shows and not know anybody and just kind of be alone with my own thoughts a lot in a practice room.
Right.
But it was also very good for me and humbling to come across so many talented people from all over the world, all different genres, different instruments,
Right.
all in one place. That was the coolest part about it.
Yeah. But going your first week without breakfast tacos.
Yes, it was rough. It was very cold. Did I mention how cold it was?
Man, I tell you what, I moved to Chicago when I was in my early 20s, and I had never been there before.
Yeah.
And I moved there in November, and about the first week I was there, snow.
Yep.
And I had a little tiny Geo Metro. Oh my God, it was terrible. Now, I recently saw you perform with Lyle Lovett at the Austin City Limits 50th anniversary taping, and I always say to people, I'm first and foremost a fan of music. As a kid, I knew that I wanted to listen to music as much as I could, that I wanted to see music as much as I could. And so I go to a lot of shows and I see a lot of bands. And I've been to a lot of tapings at ACL. But for me, that moment of watching you standing side by side with Lyle, playing your fiddle and then singing the harmony, it just really moved me to see it, not because, you've been playing with Lyle probably since you were in your teens or, early 20s easy, but because it just looked like you were having so much fun up there and that the two of you really got along. I mean, you can see people on stage and you're like, oh, those guys don't like each other.
We do.
Yeah.
He's kind of like Uncle Lyle at this point. And I have a photo of I think the day I met him when I was 7.
Wow.
Like sitting on his knee. And my dad was in the band at that point,
Sure.
of course. And you talked earlier about like early moments of inspiration, and I've told Lyle this story too, but one of my first wow moments where I was like, this is what I want to do, was seeing my dad play in the large band at the Paramount Theater.
Yeah.
And I was like 7 or 8 years old. And I just remember up to that point, I'd only seen him at Threadgills and the Continental Club, and music was this social event, and it was real laid back and fun. But to be in a theater where there's a lot of people dressed up, sitting quietly watching.
Yeah.
The band is wearing suits. When my dad takes a solo, a spotlight goes on him, and you could see his guitar reflecting that light across the crowd.
I love that.
And they all erupted in applause at the end of the solo, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was part of his job too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was one of those moments of that's so cool.
I have 2 very specific Lyle questions to ask you. One is, what is your favorite Lyle song that you play right now with Lyle?
Well, that's right. You're not from Texas, because every night he sings that song. He mentions Champ and Walter and David by name, Uncle Walt's band, and I get to play. He says, "Old Champ's on the guitar," and there's a lick, and I get to play the lick.
Oh, so cool.
And I love the intro horn part and all that. Just the whole thing. But yeah, it's really fun to stand. And I remember seeing my dad play that song with him when I was
so
a kid,
cool.
and so it's really cool to be up there for that.
Okay, now here's the second very specific Lyle song question. What song does Lyle not play that you wish Lyle would play?
Oh man. Well, I don't even know if I should tell the story. I'm gonna tell the story because it's not a secret. He's told the story.
Okay, good.
I used to enjoy playing L.A. County, because it's kind of like a bluegrass song, and there's a high harmony I get to sing, and I think it's a well-written song. And he never played it, and it would get requested at shows, and I would hear him say from the stage, he's like, well, that song is about, a guy who's unhappy with the situation and uses a gun to
Sure.
in a bad way, and he says, and I'm not going to promote that anymore.
Right.
I'm not going to sing that song anymore.
Right.
And I, always had a respect for Lyle, but that
Sure.
just kind of made him grow even taller in my book. Of
100%.
what a man of principle he is, and I totally understand why he doesn't do that song anymore.
Yeah.
Even I think it's fun to play.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when you're playing, you're not necessarily listening to all the words. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, you've accomplished so much in your life already as a musician. You're 41.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're clearly a vampire. Now, you've done so much already. What kind of goals or like dream gigs are still out there that you haven't crossed off yet?
Well, I used to kind of look at my career that way of like, what's the next tier and
Yeah.
going up and up. But I've got 2 boys now. They're 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And a wife that I really like hanging out with.
Aw.
And the road and music has kind of taken a back seat to all that. And so I feel like I'm already kind of living my vision of success, and the idea of being on a tour bus and playing 100 dates a year and touring is the last thing I want to do, honestly. And I've found myself in this town in Austin where I couldn't do what I'm doing in any other town. I can make a pretty good living without touring. You
Yeah.
can't do that in New York or LA. I mean,
Nope.
if you're like in the top tier of session players, maybe, but that's very few.
Yeah, or like a Broadway player.
Right.
Yeah.
But to be able to have my residency and play some private parties, sideman with some people locally or maybe in Houston, do session work,
Yeah.
I've found a way to be home a lot and still play music.
I love
and
that.
for me, it's all about collaborating with people. I just did a tour with Ian Moore and Bucka Allen, and I really enjoy collaborating with those guys on their songs and them doing my songs. And that's kind of what it's all about for me is working with people. And I get as much enjoyment often out of rehearsal
Sure.
as the show.
Yeah.
If it's with the right people and the right band.
Of course.
And whatnot. Now, that said, I still want to play, a festival set, and my band sounds really good, and I want to get out in front of a lot of people and,
Right.
and do the, but, if it happens, it happens. And I'm not necessarily taking a very proactive approach in making it happen. But I will say, I'm sorry I'm rambling on here.
No,
I
you're
did
good.
play at the UT football game a
I
couple weeks
saw
ago.
that,
I got
yeah.
to play in the end zone at the 2-minute warning with the cheerleaders dancing behind me.
That was pretty cool.
That's going to be hard to top.
When I saw that, I was like, that is a cool gig.
I got the kids down on the field
Aw.
for part of the game, and that's going to be a hard one to top.
Okay, so you mentioned the residency. I want everybody to know. Tell us about the residency because you're still doing it.
Been playing 9 years every Wednesday at the ABGB, which stands for Austin Beer Garden and Brewery.
Yep.
They've been there a little longer than I have, about 10 years. Best beer I've ever had.
Yeah.
And they win, awards all the time for it, and also great food. And more than anything, they just treat the bands so well.
Right.
You show up there, there's a little name tag on the table that says "Welcome."
It's always
Warren
so nice to
Hood.
see that.
There's a hot pizza waiting for you, and they ask you, "What do you want from the bar?" And it's just to get treated like that. It doesn't happen everywhere, and we noticed. But we've been doing it for 9 years and plan to keep going. I'm going to make a live record from there soon.
Oh, cool.
We've just been doing it for so long. I figure we got to have this down on something.
And it sounds good there.
It does. Everybody comes and dances. It's all ages. It's
Yeah.
free.
Yeah,
The kids come when they're out of school and
Yeah.
dance.
that's great. Now, before we go, I wanted to talk to you about the Armadillo Christmas
Oh,
Bazaar.
yeah. The Armadillo Christmas Bazaar.
Yeah. So let's talk first about what is your first memory of coming here? Was it as a musician or as Champ's son?
I'm sure I came before I played. I don't
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
But I've been playing it for about 25 years at this point.
Wow.
And one of the first gigs would have been when I was about 15, 16.
Yeah.
And I was doing a father-son show
Yeah.
with my dad, and he had gotten pulled over the night before coming home with Tony Price, and they ended up in jail.
Champ and
so-
Tony,
Champ
both-
and Tony, I think they, for a roach on the floorboard, something like that.
Sure.
Something very minor.
Something very minor that if they got
But
pulled
it-
over in Austin today, it's decriminalized.
It'd be nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. And I remember her complaining about it, and she said with an eye roll, she's like, "Yeah, the cop asked what we did. I said I was a singer, and he said, I bet you can write a good blues song about this tonight."
Oh, God.
Anyway, they didn't make it back in time, so I ended up doing the father-son show with Scrappy Judd Newcomb.
Oh, my God.
It was me and Scrappy, and my dad ended up coming for the last 40 minutes
Sure.
or whatnot. He got out of the slammer. Okay.
Came down.
But that was like maybe my earliest Christmas Bazaar memory.
That's awesome.
And then I've played many since then with various bands, and I can say, sitting right here looking out, it feels the same as it always has,
Yeah.
even in a different location.
Yeah.
I see a lot of the same artists with their booths. I love walking around looking at all of the art. I have bought some over the years.
Sure.
And my house, I have probably 13 night lights from one of these stands over here in every outlet. And I can remember, something about that year when I got that night light.
Yeah.
What I was doing. And little bits of art around the house always remind me of good times here.
I love that. How important do you feel like the Armadillo Christmas Bazaar is to the vibe, the of what makes Austin Austin?
It's just the most Austin thing you can do. In a town that's changed a whole lot. It's one of the things we still have left that kind of ties us to the past of Austin. But there's nothing, it's still like the art here is very relevant. And, it kind of brings the old and the new together, in my opinion.
It really does. And for me, especially when I see the younger people, not children per se, but I mean younger people in their 20s shopping, hanging out, it really gives me some hope of what we have to come in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yes.
Because this, and I say this, when I'm on the air, that it's the holiday destination. But I really do believe that. I feel like it is. I can't go a Christmas without coming to the bazaar.
Yeah.
And there's just so many great things to love about it. And the music, of course, is one of my favorite parts.
The whole lineup, the whole way through was just great.
Yeah.
It's just very Austin.
It is very, very Austin. So today is Tuesday. That means tomorrow night you'll be at the ABGB.
That's right.
Where else are you going to be playing before the end of the year?
I'm going to play with Casper Rawls on Thursday at his residency, the Continental Club, with Rich Brotherton and Scrappy Judd.
Is that a happy hour gig?
That's a happy hour gig he's been doing for, I might get this wrong, but like 13, 14 years at this point.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm kind of off for a little bit.
Good.
Good. Do the Christmas thing. And, I've been out for the last 5 days and had gigs even before that. So December is usually a pretty busy month, but the bazaar is kind of the beginning of the slowdown for me.
Sure.
And so really happy to be back home.
And tonight, everybody can see you here.
I'll be here at 4 o'clock today.
Okay,
Yeah.
and today you're going to be bringing the acoustic show.
Got my acoustic band with Willie Pipkin and Marshall Hood and Nate Rowe.
Okay. Well, everybody, Warren Hood, one of our greatest. Are you already in the Austin Music Hall of Fame?
I am.
Yeah, one of our greatest musicians here in Austin, and a big part of what makes Austin cool, just like the Armadillo Christmas Bazaar. Thanks so much for being a part of this Sun Radio session, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.